Hello and welcome
Okay,
to
guys.
round number 2 of the Expedition podcast here on our YouTube channel, Con Sun LOR. Today we will be talking about a special project that Herko has set up for his web page Mastering Runeterra, I think it's called. And our guests today are Herko and Arthur again. Because the introduction was cut short a little bit, maybe you can say last time we didn't record the full thing, but maybe you can introduce yourself shortly once more, and then we'll have Herko talk about the project.
Okay, since he's the most experienced in this topic, I let Arthur introduce himself first.
Okay, sure. Hi, my name is Arthur, and I've been playing Runeterra for about 2 years now, since the open beta. I'm a limited format fan at heart, so I've been playing expeditions pretty much exclusively, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
My end, I'm a big fan of limited formats. I've been playing limited formats in a lot of games. I'm nowhere near as good as Conan or Otho, but I do like to, how we would put it, go out of my way to tell people how extremely good this format is and how fun it is. So, well, that's why I tend to hang around these guys and, well, tell the rest of the world how fun this format is.
Great. So let's maybe you can tell us about the project you're doing, the tier list for the champions.
Okay, so as Conan mentioned, I write for Mastering Runeterra. That's the website by Jason Florent and Majinbai, and basically I'm the guy that is taking care of expeditions. And we already released an article I did also interviewing a couple of you guys about the resistance, let's call it, about Riot not giving us a competitive format and topics of the nature. And this specific project was trying to come up with a simplified tier list. And I stress simplified because when I ask these experts, Conan and Arthur, and also others on the Discord channel, they basically told me there's no way to make a we cannot just rate put a number from 1 to 10 to each champion to help people pick, and because there's a lot of nuance to this to the picks we do. But then, well, after a lot of back and forth, we sort of agreed into what we're going to discuss now. That okay, let's see what we can do in order to make a simplified tier list that makes newcomers to the format, makes their life a bit easier, because even though on the surface it's simple, because each time you face a choice is just 3 choices, and when you do a draft in Runeterra, things get extremely complicated. There's a lot of nuance to what we do. There's a lot of things to consider, and the most interesting part is that not all expert drafters go about the same way. I think, for example, you, Arthur, you go by the numbers, right?
Yep.
You're the one that, for example, if you need to take into account what to pick, you usually go to some website like Lord Guardian or something, and you prefer to go by the metrics, so to speak, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Well, others like Conan, they sort of take a different approach. Like Conan, what's your method of picking a champion, for example?
I mostly look at these different buckets they're in. If you note the Battle Draft, there are these different funny names for the card buckets, and that makes a big difference in my opinion. There are champions that have multiple buckets, there are champions that only have one bucket, and these buckets are pretty different. If we, for example, take a look at Callista, she has 2 different buckets. One is just the Shadow Isles, Mono Shadow Isles build around, and the other one is actually paired with Lucian and tries to do some stuff with ephemeral units like the Shark Chariot. And I like the build around for the Afterlife because I like the Mist Caller very much. or the Wave Caller, it's called, the Mist Wave Build-Around. But I
As
don't...
anybody not as anybody not familiar with the format may be thinking right now, what the heck do we do with all that?
True.
Basically, yeah, we have an extremely nuanced format in some ways that we can discuss in other podcasts because it would take too much time now. There's a lot of things to consider.
Exactly.
So sometimes, I mean, the challenge for newcomers is saying, okay, I cannot process all this information. I don't know all the cards. I need something to guide myself with. Arthur recently linked to us the Limited Resources podcast where one of the guys had a phrase. He was speaking about the start of Magic when nobody knew how to draft. And they saying when they started coming with ratings, an expression that I like very much, he said basically, whoa, we needed some numbers at least to be able to talk about the elephant. So I can compare my side of the elephant to your side of the elephant. So basically what I was trying to do here with this tier list, which again, those that just heard Conan describing his thought process, there's no way to put that into a scale of 1 to 10 simply. But for somebody who doesn't know all the cards and all the champions and how the archetypes work and all the buckets, etc., what can we do to sort of put this into something that is easy or simpler, even if some nuance is lost in the process? Something that they can guide themselves with. So, well, that's what we came up. I can talk a bit more about it. But first, I wanted to hear you guys, how you went about when I asked you to rate this champion. So, if you want to explain that a bit, so our listeners know your thought process.
Okay, so basically Herko wrote me and sent me a big Excel list where I should have noted all of these different champions. He sent it to 4 of our quote-unquote professional drafters in our Discord, and some of the still learning drafters also participated in the in this questioning. And I basically just wrote in how I feel about the champion and the buckets they come with. So I didn't just rate the champion as a standalone card. If they had a good card pool but were a little bit of a weaker champion, I still gave them a bigger grade. And if they were good, like in the other way around, I would also factor that in. But I didn't look at any data. I just used my personal feelings from playing thousands of expedition games. What about you, Arthur?
So I was sent the same list from Herko, and my starting point was the Law Guardian stats. And all of the champions are essentially listed from 1 to 74, from the top to the bottom, from the best to the worst in terms of win rate over the last month. And that was my starting point, and I did adjust upon it based on 2 things. Firstly, also my personal experience. So sometimes when a champion is played at a particularly low rate, then the sample size is too low, and I don't think the outcomes is very useful. So I tend to kind of adjust for some of these champions up or down based on what my personal experience playing with or against it has been. And the second was when I took the snapshot, it was before the most recent patch note that we talked about. So not all of the updates would have flow through because the data is from over the last month. So I've adjusted for those as well, up and down based on whether they were buffed or nerfed. And I tried to use the whole range of the 1 to 10 scale so that it ended up being roughly a uniform distribution. So kind of there's 2 ways of expecting how the distribution will fold. One is a uniform distribution, so you would have equal number of 1s and 2s and 3s as 6, 8, 10s. So it ends up being kind of a rectangle. And another option is you end up with a bell curve where you have more of the things in the middle and less of the things at the end, the 1s and 10s. I tried to go for a rectangular uniform distribution so that people could figure out the difference between the mid-tier champions a bit more helpfully as well.
Okay, interesting. I went more for this rectangular scheme where I just thought about who's the worst champion in the pool. That would be Maokai for me, for example, and who's the best champion, like Zoe. And then I would just think about medium champions and basically arrange these in between, but most of them would be in the medium range on my scale. Uh, How did you proceed from
And,
that point, Herko?
well, I mean, I should mention, I mean, somebody following this podcast should do well now to check the lists we did. It would be more clear that way. But basically, in the Runeterra article, what you'll see is the 3 tiers that we distributed champions. I'll talk about those 3 tiers a bit more in a bit. But there's also this mother spreadsheet with a lot of numbers where we have Arthur, Conan, Shares, Rion, the Pedro J as our experts. Also a column with the ratings based. I transform linearly, nothing fancy. The win rates from Law Guardian that Arthur just spoke about, I transformed them to a scale from 1 to 10. Did the same for Balco, which is some data that we do have with those that play constructed will know Balco by his meta reports. Basically, on a chat I had with him on Twitter, he thought of discovered that he could also dig information about what expeditions those constructed players play. So I'll dig. Basically, it's this Barcode makes a constructed meta report from master players. He cannot get much more data than that because, well, Riot limits the amount of data they are willing to give you. I mean, you can get anything you want, you cannot get everything. So Balco tracks constructed master players and he constructs his meta reports. From those players, we discovered he could get also all games those players play. That includes expedition games that those constructed master player play. So he was able to dig some data about win rates of champions based on that data sample, which is very interesting because it's a different sample from Lord Guardian. Lord Guardian tends to be players that play expeditions, and you can see on the win rates, I mean, there's heavily skewed the win rates towards winning. Whereas Balco has a more random sample from the side of expeditions because we don't know, those players, constructed master players, surely know the game. They are not going to make mistakes about the stack, for example, or how passing works, but maybe they're expert at expeditions or maybe they're not. So that's another sample that we have there. And basically what we end up doing is, okay, let's make an average of all experts. Let's rate and order the champions, sort the champions based on that rating, the average range in all experts put them, and then push things a bit up and down based on if there is some discrepancies, which is what we're going to talk in a minute. Some champions, all sources rate more or less the same. For example, Shyvana. You see Shyvana, you take her. Everybody agrees. Be it because she's very strong by herself, well, because she comes with a great bucket, or whatever other opaque reasons we are not able to discern yet. Shyvana is excellent. On the other hand, Pike is probably trash. Everybody agrees on that. Can you take Pike to 7 wins? Yes, somebody can, but more often than not, if you're starting out on expeditions, you see Pike, you do not take Pike. So we sort of rated the champions that way to come up with 3 tiers that we will cover in a bit. I don't know if you, Conan, want to say something more about this?
No, I think it's fine about this process. You've explained it well, so I don't have much to add here.
Okay, so basically then taking a bit of inspiration of this rectangle that Arthur just explained, sort of the champions were divided in 3 tiers. The top tier, basically the aim is to help players that are new to expeditions. Our goal is to make those players' lives simpler. So basically, we put 15 of the 74 champions that you could see. Okay, so we took 15, 20%, the top 20%, and we rated those top tiers. Basically, you see one of this, you pick one of this. Mathematics is interesting in that by just taking this top 20%, these top 15 champions, we are able to cover pretty much 40% of the cases. Because 40% of the time you should see only one of those guys. So basically, there's not much doubt. You see one of the best, and you have no problem picking. If you see two of this, then well, as Arthur said, we put them in rectangles, so you sort of know which one to pick and which one not, and then you go from there. Then we have the trash tier. Usually, if you're accustomed to constructed tile lists, you see the best, and then you see the middle, and you see the bottom at the bottom because nobody wants to play them. Expeditions run a bit differently. That's why the first thing you'll see on the list is the top tier, the ones you do pick, and then next is the trash tier, the ones you do not want. Basically, because it's a simple heuristic. You see two of this. I mean, you open your draft. You see two bad champions. You pick the third one, no matter who's the third. And then you have the playables, which would be sort of the tough spot. I mean, tough spot in the sense that when sometimes, usually tough decisions are when the decision is close. So if you don't have anything from the top and you don't have anything from the bottom, okay, then now you'll have to probably think a bit more what you want to play because these guys are close on power. About that though, I wanted Arthur share with that very interesting quote by Ryan Spence about it. Would you like to share that, Arthur?
Yeah, sure. It was just something that I think will help people who have what's called analysis paralysis, when you have a lot of difficulty trying to decide between two cards or two picks that are very close. And it's the idea that the closer the picks are, the least it matters. Because when you have something that is very good and something that is also very good, but maybe slightly better, maybe slightly worse, the actual difference that you'll get in terms of the impact from picking either one of those packs is pretty minimal. And the ones that will cost you the most will be the ones that have the largest difference, being fairly easy picks. If you're picking a really bad pack over a really good pack, then that will have the most impact. So all this is to say that if you're facing a particularly difficult choice, don't agonize over it too long. It doesn't matter too much. If you just go with one or the other, both will be pretty good. Or similarly, if both are pretty bad, just take your losses and move on. They'll both be similarly bad.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't exactly know how to organize the information until you gave me that quote, and that resonated with me a lot. It was saying, okay, yeah, let's divide things in 3 groups. So if they are very far apart, okay, life is simple. And if they're close, no matter. I mean, just pick whichever champion you think you're gonna do better with. So don't agonize on don't sweat the small stuff, I guess it would be called. Still, to illustrate that point a bit, I mean, this list that we are doing, I mean, they're just not finalized. I mean, the Mastering Runeterra article is not yet published. We still have a bit of room to finalize, to give the final touches. So basically, what I wanted to do with you guys is ask a couple of questions about how to sort a couple of the champions based on discrepancies on the data. Basically, right now, the list as I see it right now, maybe it's not going to be the final version. We have the 2 worst champion in the top tier. I mean, the top tier, the champs will say, you see this, you pick this. The 2 worst champions according to these numbers, and again, the numbers are very slim there. But if we go by the numbers that we have, the worst 2 champions in that top tier would be Zoe and Zion. They'll be the guys at the bottom. Our teachers, they rate them 7.9 and 7.8. And the data from Guardian and Balco agrees. I mean, for example, Zion, our teacher said he's a 7.6, and Lord Guardian says it's a 7.7, and Balco says it's a 7.7. That's the kind of thing you say, whoa, I love what everybody agrees. Ain't that a great? But if you go to the playable tier, at the top of the playable tier, I mean, the best you could get from the playable tier happens to be Draven. Quite fitting. Zion is the last of the top, and Draven is the head of the middle. And Draven is there because our teachers rate him as 7.1. That's to say, quite lower than Zion. But when you check data from Low Guardian or Balco, Low Guardian says, okay, no, Draven is a 9.2. And Balco says, no, that's a 9.1. So basically, we have the two hard data samples saying this is a fairly good champion, Draven, 9.2, 9.1, but our teachers are not very happy with it, 7.1. So the question here would be, because in this case, even if the difference in numbers is small, we are putting them in different tiers. Should we put Draven on the, you see this, you pick, and if we do that, who we move out, Zoe or Zion? What would you say?
So maybe I can quickly say something about Zoe and Zion. They are
Go
both
for it.
champions that try to do something very different than their region identity. Zoe wants to be a little bit more aggressive in Targon and get units on the board quickly. Her whole pool is built that way. And Zion is this late game finisher for Noxus decks, the most expensive card basically most expensive champion in Noxus, and you have to survive until turn 7 and fulfill this very special condition for him to flip. Draven, on the other hand, is just a good standalone card and a champion that just fits into every Noxus deck. But I personally rated him lower since he's in a bad card pool, in my opinion, just the scrap heap, all the 1-drops. And I just don't like this style. It's too all-in for my taste. And Draven also got nerfed in the last patch. Arthur probably has factored that in as well. He's lost 1 point of health, so he's probably less strong than he was before.
Yeah, so in my analysis of Draven, I tried to be, analysis of all of these champions for this tier list. I tried to be forward-looking, so I took into account that Draven has lost that point of health, which I think is quite significant because of the challengers from Demacia, as I mentioned last time. So I think even though the backward-looking statistics from Lord Guardian and Balco over the last month suggest that he was the top tier champion, I think this actually puts him down quite a bit. So I don't think he is as good as he was, which probably accounts for that discrepancy.
Excellent. This is in sort of these cases, and I think I will leave him at the top of the playable tier. I mean, a champion you're happy to take. I mean, it's not like he's a disaster. Because of the data we call nickname students that will be very experienced drafters in our Discord that are still not teacher level, so to speak, they hate Draven. I mean, they put him 1.6, probably because, as Conan mentioned, they ran full of the buckets. So yeah, this is a bit to illustrate to our listeners how we go about this. So probably Draven is gonna stay where he is. Another champion I wanted to talk to you about, or actually compare, is LeBlanc versus Sivir. If you go for it by our teachers, they rate them very closely, 7.3 for Sivir and LeBlanc 7.4. But Sivir is a star for Guardian and Balco. So basically, right now I would put Sivir at the top tier, basically the one champion that you snap pick, while LeBlanc would be among the best of the playables, but not among the snap picks. Basically, what would you think? Do we keep Sivir on the top and LeBlanc as the playable, or should we switch them around?
So as a standalone card, I like Sivir way more because of the spell shield enabling all these strike effects, and LeBlanc just dies pretty easily sometimes. But if you again look at the card pools, LeBlanc just has the way better curve, and Sylvia basically has all these stupid landmarks with these rock bears that you can't really play at all. So as a standalone card, I like Sylvia quite a lot, and quite more than LeBlanc, but from the card pool and drafting perspective, LeBlanc was my favorite. That's why I rated her higher than Sylvia personally.
I think both are very strong. I also rated LeBlanc and Sylvia into the top tier. I certainly think they're stronger than Zoe and Zion, who are in the top tier at the moment. It is, as Conan said, that Noxus is a lot more reliable in terms of getting good cards. It's quite easy to just get a bunch of Glory Seekers in Noxus, maybe some Blade Generation with LeBlanc, and it's quite easy to flip her if she doesn't die. Whereas Sylvia, even though she's stronger standalone, the package that she comes with, and also the region of Shurima, is not as reliable as Noxus in trying to find the good cards. But I think both of them are very strong.
Okay, so would you agree that both Sylvia and LeBlanc would deserve a higher rating or higher spot than Zoe and Zion? And if yes, which one between Zoe and Zion, which one will you put down a peg and send to the playable tier, so to speak?
I would like Zoe is my favorite champion. I always talk about her. I have literally 10,000 mastery points just by drafting her in expeditions.
I know. That's
and like I think just she's very hard to play. She's not really like she's in a bad role between an early game champ and a late game champ, and tries to get value in the early game. And similarly, Zion tries to be like this late game finisher where you have to play big units or discard stuff. And those are pretty hard to play, whereas with LeBlanc you can just play her and attack for 5 and they have to block over and over and just die eventually. So I'm fine with moving them down a bit if we factor in the new players still having to learn these champions, but from a power level perspective and from a matchup perspective I like Zoe more. You could move Zion down in my opinion because he's sometimes just not good enough or strong enough.
I think either is fine. I think, in my opinion, I would move both down. I don't think either of them are that reliable to be remaining in the top tier, but either is fine with me.
Okay. Would you be comfortable with putting Tristana on the top tier?
Well, she was recently buffed, so I personally didn't have the chance yet to play with Tristana after her buffs. I played against her once, but I just killed her immediately, so not much to say about her yet. I just was abusing dragons too hard these last few drafts, and I think she's will be stronger.
I'm asking because Tristana is one of Balco's stars. He's a 9.9 on Balco, suggesting that again, players that are master constructed are very happy to take her, and also considering that this master constructed players, some of them might be also master drafters, and also others may be just okay. So maybe she's more, rookie friendly, perhaps.
Yes, indeed. I think she's a good starting champion. All you have to do is play on the curve and play Yordles and Arms, and then you will win a lot of games. And I should certainly say she's a good starting champion for newer players.
I think Tristana is a champion that has quite a low floor and quite a high ceiling. I think she is quite synergy dependent because she needs to get those multi-region cards, and if she doesn't get those, she really isn't very good at all. A 3-mana 1/3 quick attack is not very strong. So you need to both have that critical mass of multi-region followers in your deck, and also you need to be able to draw them at some point as well. And for that reason, she basically requires the whole of your deck to kind of revolve around her. Whereas if you try and just put her together with another champion that's also quite synergy dependent, she loses quite a lot. But if you manage to get her archetype, a lot of the cards from her multi-region archetype, then she can be very strong.
But I mean, it's not like you
Well,
lose out on too much by drafting these multi-region cards. Like they are all decent on their own, like the Battle Commando, making the 2/1s, Bomber Twins, and all these random units that are just, you don't really have that much of a downside by trying to pick up these multi-region cards, in my opinion.
Yeah, sometimes.
Well, I hope. Sorry, Arthur. Go ahead, please.
Sometimes you just don't get them, or sometimes you don't draw them. In which case, at what point does a 3-mana X3 quick attack become worthwhile? Certainly not at 1/3. Probably not at 2/3. At 3/3, she's probably just about good enough. In which case, she kind of needs 2 multi-region allies before that happens. So.
Maybe one thing to mention is they don't have to be a different region. You can just play a 10 of Terrors, and then she's already a 3/3 quick attack. But yeah. I think Herko wants to move on to another card.
Yeah, no, I'm laughing because of this. I mean, part of the convincing I had to do with these experts, I mean, was exactly this. I mean, I hope all listeners right now understand. I mean, that's really putting a number from 1 to 10 is too simplistic. But on the other hand, if you want to put it this way, we are doing right now the agonizing about splitting hairs. So you guys listening to this don't have to, okay? But it's like this. I mean, watching these guys draft, I mean, we do that on the Discord channel. Basically, these guys help others draft, and it's fascinating. I mean, the complexity of every decision in a draft is mind splitting using the 8-mana dragon that apparently freezes your mind or splits your mind by showing it the depth of the complexity of the cosmos. The bottom line that I would like to get through here, and the reason we're doing this podcast and we plan to release it again along with the tier list, is these champions are still very close in power. I mean, and we're never going to agree, and it's fine. The objective of the list is to sort of, okay, gloss over all that complexity for people to be able to jump into the draft, knowing that, okay, I have a good champion here, I'm going to do my best. Or, okay, I just got screwed, I got offered the trash, I'm probably going to lose, and that's that. I mean, maybe we don't. Knowing that you have been dealt a bad card, I think helps to ease a bit of the frustration that sometimes comes with the draft, because it's very hard to know what went wrong. I mean, in Constructed, if you have a strong deck and you perform poorly, then that's on the pilot. There's little doubt. In here, it's difficult. I mean, did you get a bad draft? Did you pick the bad choice, etc. So basically, I wanted to mention this. Probably in the final list, or most likely, Sivir is going to be on the top. LeBlanc, from what we just discussed, is going to be at the top. And I have to myself, on my responsibility, look a bit at the numbers about what to do with Tristana, because she's very strong on Balco, but not so much as you've seen when you compare it with other stats. So we're probably going to move it, but just know, I mean, if some champ is at the top of the playable list and some champ is at the bottom of the top tier list, they are very close in power. These lists are mostly when you have something at the top of the top compared with the middle and the bottom, you pick the top. You have 2 trash champions and 1 playable, you pick the playable. Make life simple for yourself and move forward, basically. Not sure if you guys want to say something else, or we move into the crack-a-pack experiment.
Maybe it was just one last few words. First of all, I want to thank you very much, Herko, for all the effort you put into this. It was a humongous amount of work writing all these people and putting this all together, and I want to thank you in the name of the whole community for all this effort you put in. It's really great. On
Yeah,
the
I
other
mentioned
hand,
it.
on the other hand, it's certainly a good starting point if you're just starting out and don't want to go 7 all the time. You just want to get your 3 wins in, for example, and it's certainly good to know, for example, a set is better than a Soraka, and it's a very good starting point, and I hope it helps bring new players to expeditions.
I will stress that this is just the starting point, and drafting for real in expeditions involves a lot more than just looking at the champions.
Yeah.
One mistake that I see newer players make is that they overemphasize their champions. Because they're cool, they're flashy, they level up, they have synergies within their decks, and they show up in your deck art, and your opponent, you can see what champions they have. But ultimately, the likelihood of you drawing your champion is exactly the same as you drawing any other card in your deck. 1 out of 30 to 1 out of 36, and so forth. So because of those reasons, you really should be taking into other things into account. And because in expeditions, we have quite a unique mechanic where we're picking packs rather than cards. So definitely take into account the followers, spells, landmarks that come with them, because the champion only makes up 1/3 of the pack. You can also take into account the power of the region, that if you expect the region to be more reliable or not, or if you understand the buckets or archetypes for the expeditions, you can kind of try and predict the strength of those buckets and archetypes as well. So the next step is a lot more complex than just choosing by champions. But if you are new to Runeterra expeditions, having some idea of how good the champions are might help you towards winning the drafts.
Exactly. And if you want to dive in deeper, there will be a list in this video in the description to our Discord, and you can also check out the other videos on my channel where I try to explain a bit how to become a better drafter. But you could always hop onto the Discord and do like a guided draft and see what we as experienced drafters consider. I will also leave a link to the Mastering Runeterra page, so that you can check it out as well and read Herko's perfectly written articles. Okay.
Okay, and to illustrate this nuance, let's do a crack a pack. Crack a pack is something that the limited resources podcast guys do. They open a pack and they assume they choose what to pick, assuming it's the first pick on the draft. And maybe we could do that exactly the same thing for the first 2 champions and see what you guys have to say about them.
Exactly. Let's do this. Okay, we've started a new draft and have 3 different options: Snapdragon, Snacks, Caitlyn, Lux, and Twisted Fate. What are your opinions?
So, in terms of the champions, I think Caitlyn is by herself a pretty good champion, but she doesn't come with a very good region nor a very good archetype/bucket. And I'm not too impressed by the Officer Squad or the ambush that it comes with. Lux does. I haven't actually played with Lux or faced against Lux since she's been buffed. But she was previously strong anyway, and Demacia is always strong. Purify is pretty much unplayable. It just doesn't do enough for the card. And Detain has gotten a lot less useful now that removal is a bit more popular as well. And then the last one, Twisted Fate, is a decent champion, but to level him up in expeditions takes quite a lot of effort. And also, I don't think Bilgewater is very good. Pool Shark, I do like a fair amount. He's an average card. And Pocket Aces, I don't think is particularly good. I think it's a buff that's overcosted.
So you would go for Lux then, if I hear that correctly? Or what would be your pick?
Hard to say. Probably Lux, then Caitlyn, then Twisted Fate. More based on the regions. if we can trade pick that Purify out for something else, then I think that pack would be pretty good. Whereas for the others, I don't think I like Ambush very much or Pocket Aces. So there's always one card in the packs of 3 that I think is fairly underwhelming. But just based on the fact that Demacia, I think, is stronger than the other 2 regions, I would probably go for the Lux pack.
Interesting. Okay. I would definitely go for Lux as well. She's also one of my favorite champions. I just checked before. I have like an 88% win rate with her before the buffs. So I just like these infinite value engines very much. And I'm not that harsh on Purify. You can counter some combat tricks with it, for example, and usually find some way to use it. It's not a great card by any means. But I like Detain. It's the only hard removal spell, even if it's just temporary for Demacia. It's like an entomb. The unit might come back, but not at this exact time. So, grand moments it would be for me as well. I'm not a big fan of Ambush. It's like a combo card and don't like comboing. Officer Squad, yes, it's a decent body for 5. And Caitlyn also decent body. That's okay. I like this Twisted Fate in this bucket. It's just a good starting champion because he's flexible and goes into every deck, no matter if aggressive or more defensive. Pocket Aces is a surprise combat trick, but he's not overwhelming. He's more of a mid champion, like in the middle of the tier list for me. I would go Lux as well. So, Herko, do you have a favorite, or should we just pick Lux?
I'm just taking notes and trying to learn something here.
Okay, so let's pick up the Lux and see who shows up next. Okay, quite a few interesting options. What do you think, Arthur?
So here we have 3 packs to follow after our Lux pick. So we have Teemo's pack, which is this one is not particularly based on mushrooms, but there's still a clump of wumps in here. Shitty character copies any other follower. Probably you want to be ending up with peddlers for that. Puffcap peddlers. You've got the Poppy pack, and Poppy is very strong, as is Bandle City. With 2 other cards, which is pretty average, pretty mediocre. The Purple Berry Shake that buffs things up to 3 3s, and Babbling Balladeers, which is also pretty mediocre. The last is Fishbones, which is Fizz's pack. This is to do with 1-drops, and you're trying to play 1-drops and buff 1-drops. Which can be very fun and very rewarding if it goes well. I have lost to, I think, triple Professor Von whatever before, which was very surprising. But it is a very high synergy archetype that requires the right things to come together before it does well. Personally, for me, again, I think I would be basing it on the region rather than the cards themselves. I like Poppy a lot, and I think the cards coming with Poppy is not bad enough to make me not want them. In fact, both of them are quite average. Nothing was as bad as Purify, I thought was before. Whereas in a Teemo pack, I think Teemo's great, but I think Shady Character is probably not very good most of the time, and Clump and Wumps is only average as well. And then with Fishbones, as I said, it's very high synergy, so I generally don't like taking those kind of risks, especially when we've already taken a first pick, which might not gel very well with this archetype. Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay.
So I would probably take the Poppy pack here.
Interesting. I think this Poppy pack is definitely the most obvious choice here. I would personally really like this Teemo because Teemo has a similar game plan to Lux, and if the game goes long, you will win basically. And Teemo also centers around these Puffcap peddlers, and they want to see spells played. Guess who else wants to see spells played? Would be Lux. But in general, when I try to draft around Lux, I try to not pick up PNC, because then you get worse grand moments, card pools. So for that reason, I don't want these PNC packs, and would probably go for Poppy as well, aiming for 7 wins. But in general, I think Pimo and Lux would be a great pairing if we would already have a Puffke Peddler in our deck. Herko, what would you think about these picks?
I tend to follow my own advice in here and go by tile lists or numbers. Basically, I would have, in these cases, we happen to have seen 2 snap picks in my case. I would have gone Lux, because Lux, every rating puts her as a very strong champion, and Demacia is by far the best region. And not only is the best region on the stats, it tends to be the best region because it has big statted minions, which tend to be easier to play. I mean, for somebody who's not that experienced as myself, boring cards, a good choice I find for myself. I mean, I don't care about flashy things. My aim is winning, and I tend to do well in general with aggressive strategies that allow me to go for combat. So Demacia always works well with me, and for the same reason I would take Poppy here. Poppy is a superly high rated champion. It tends to come with a lot of, Bandle City tends to come with a lot of board pressure, which I like. So I would definitely take here. And I don't see on the other buckets anything that caught my attention. It's like it's not like I'm debating here. I would have snap picked Lux and Poppy, but to make my life simpler, basically, there's nothing else on the other packs that I would have taken over these champions.
I agree, and like I said, Poppy is probably the strongest choice standalone. But if this was not a Poppy, if it was like a Garion, I would probably go for the Teemu over the second Demacia, or even if a Tristana would show up here. Just Poppy is such a strong champion standalone.
Another note I want to say that is something that we do stress on the article is in Constructed, one of my favorite archetypes right now is Rally Elusive. That's said Poppy. So Poppy is a champion I know, at least in Constructed, how to use. I mean, I don't play Lux in Constructed because nobody does. But I don't have much experience with the other champions. I have played Fizz, for example, but it's not a champion I know well. And Fizz has all these things that, okay, we need 6 spells to level him up and he can block. If I was to play Fizz, I know I will try to be smarter than I can be. I will try to hold to a spell, trying to see if I can bite my opponent into casting something onto Fizz and then trying to counter that with my spell. Poppy, I know I'm going to make my life simple. I know what she does. I'm not sure if I will be able to pull it on an expedition, but I know what she does. I know what she is. She's like a big spell in a way. So yeah, I would go with those choices.
Okay, so pretty easy first 2 picks for us. Of course, there's no more going into drafting and into the following picks, but we will end our podcast here. Thank you all for listening, and thank you Herko and Arthur for joining me again for discussing this tier list. Check out all the different links in the description below, and I hope you learned something and had a good time.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, Conan, and thanks for the article, Herko. Hopefully it goes up soon.